All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our brand new kickoff for the 24-25 academic year. As you know, my name is Ayana Jones. I've been working here at the CollegeBound Foundation for about 11 years now. Prior to this, I worked in the financial aid office at Stevenson University. And our topic for today is AI solutions for equity. And we have a great presenter who I am low-key jealous of, Dr. Neil. He is in Brazil right now. And not happy about this cool weather we're having up here, but I'm sure he's doing well. I'm going to just give you a brief snapshot of him. He is an international educator. He's passionate about working with students. He's done it for 23 years, so he has me beat. And he's worked in about 6 different high schools and 4 different continents. So we have a great presenter for you all today. He's dedicated. He is the director of college counseling at Graded, the American school in Sao Paulo, Brazil, like I said. He's also a consultant, but most importantly, I'm glad to have him here because he is one of the few that I've seen to be able to marry the tech speak, as I put it, with college access in particular. So you all are in for a treat today. Of course, you all know I love our audience engagement. So I'm going to see if we can just get a quick temperature check. We're going to launch a quick poll for you all. Hopefully you all see it. Just asking you all about your level of excitement when it comes to AI and counseling students. I'm going to say originally when I heard about it, I was like, not too excited. Then I went to a webinar hosted by Dr. Neil, and I was like, I could probably get into this a little bit. So just about 10, 20 more seconds. Gonna give you guys to answer. How excited are you about the use of AI in counseling students, particularly around college access? All right. A few more seconds. Have 75% of you participating. Okay, so we have a pretty good spread. Some are very excited, some are somewhat excited. I love the skeptics like me. Thank you for being honest. A few skeptical folks. So I am going to go on mute and let Dr. Neil take it over. Thanks, Dr. Neil.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Miss Ayana. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. My goal here is to, I think my goal is to try to give you a few takeaways, a few things that you can walk away from that you might be able to apply. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to feel a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot that we're going to try to cover, a lot of use cases, and I just want to let you know here at the outset that I share all of my resources. Everything that you see here, you will have access to afterwards. I'll make sure Miss Ayana has this slide deck to share with you. All the links, all the videos, even the prompts that I'm using. So that said, without further ado, I'm going to dive in. And just talk a little bit about my love affair with AI. I'm going to be brief so we can get to some of the how-to videos. But I kind of fell in love with artificial intelligence because I am what I would refer to as an efficiency junkie. Like so many people working in our domain, we're always trying to find a way to save a few minutes so that we can, get the immense workload that we have on our plates done a little bit more quickly. I've only ever worked in schools. I never worked on the college side, and I never worked in the sort of college access domain. But my sense of things is that we're all birds of a feather. and we're always trying to find new ways to do things. So when I first started looking at artificial intelligence, I was struck by the ways in which it can address so many of the inefficiencies in the work that we do. So I'm going to dive in. Well, before, somebody will inevitably ask, why is there an ostrich on there? When I first started doing these presentations, and believe it or not, this is my 82nd presentation on artificial intelligence since ChatGPT was first released on November 30th of 2022. And this, my initial sort of challenge for the audience was, don't be an ostrich. And as you know, I think we all assume, ostriches, when they're afraid, they stick their head in the sand. After my very first presentation, a woman came on and said, actually, Jeff, that is a fiction made up by Warner Brothers cartoons. My husband is a zoologist, and ostriches don't actually ever shove their head in the sand. So if you walk away with nothing else, now you know something a little bit more about ostriches. So I'll move along. So this is one of those sort of thoughts that I'm sure you've encountered at some point. It's been in the news. You won't be replaced by AI, but you might be replaced by somebody who's using AI. My hope is that you'll walk away with a couple of ways in which you might be able to use AI in your own practice, in your own work. But also, I'll skip to the end and just share that I'm going to give you some tools as well that you might be able to implement with your students directly. So part of it's going to be about how you can use this in your work, but also how you can use it with students. This happened, this voice message came through to me today. I'm not going to take the time to read it, but my friend Adam just relocated from Bolivia to, he's in Tanzania now. He's brand new out of school there. And he just basically tells me this morning that through some of the AI work that I've shared, he wrote 8 letters, met with students over lunch, and hosted a college representative on campus all in one day. And so he was just saying how much this has really changed his practice, something that he heretofore wouldn't have been able to do. And then I'd like to share this at the end of each year in my particular school, my context right now in Brazil, we ask a pretty comprehensive survey of our students at the end of the year. Now, what you see is 23 and 24. There was no appreciable difference in the programming that we delivered to our students. What the difference was is in 2024, we fully went on board with as much artificial intelligence as we could possibly get our hands on. And one of the things that we did is we deliberately turned that time that we were saving, for example, in our context, writing letters of recommendation, and we gave that back to the students. And what that resulted in was a significant, if you're a data-minded person, that's a pretty significant movement from 23 to 24 in terms of essentially, how well do you feel your college counselor knows you? A metric that's meant to say, how well do you feel supported? So this is just one of those things that we've seen in our practice. So I'm going to dive in with some of the how-tos, some of the sort of live examples. Having done this a few times, I'm going to share some videos, and then I'm just going to kind of talk you through them here. So first up, drafting letters of recommendation. To harken back to what I said when I first saw some of the inefficiencies, we write letters of recommendation. I know many of you will do the same, maybe for scholarships, maybe for to support students in their applications. And this was the first, I've always been critical of this process, this thing that we have to do, where I would lock myself in my office during the first semester of senior year, ostensibly when the students need us the most, to write a letter about the students that need my help. And then that letter, which I think I'm a fast writer, it would take me 3 hours, was then, at NACAC last year, my colleague did a live reading of a letter of recommendation with the Dean of Admissions from Hamilton College in New York, and he read the letter in 1 minute and 17 seconds. And so it just speaks to that inefficiency of, 3 hours for a letter that's being read in 1 minute and 17 seconds. And so it was kind of crazy to think about. So I started tinkering, and what we'll see here, and I'm going to play this video, and there is no sound. That confuses people. You'll hear me talking. And what we do is we have a brag sheet. And the brag sheet is a student completed document. This is the prompt. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in. And basically at the end, what it says is, please, that I want you to write a letter of recommendation based upon the brag sheet. Now, I, for privacy purposes, completed the brag sheet myself for this illustration. So all I did is copy and paste the prompt, copy and pasted the brag sheet in. And our brag sheet is fairly comprehensive. The brag sheet goes through, we work through our students with through the brag sheet January through June of the junior year, in an iterative process through Google Docs, where we ask follow-up questions, ask for more information. And the students do a pretty good job with it. It's one of those ways in which we can hold them accountable. And what you see here is in a minute and what do we got? A minute and 5 seconds. It just created a letter of recommendation. One of the other reasons that I used my own data in this was because I was really concerned about that idea of hallucinations, that idea that ChatGPT, there was a lot of news that's been around that about making up information. And I figured I know myself best. I know, so I wanted to see what it would come up with. And then the next question is, so what do we do? Will we copy and paste this into a Google Doc, and then we go back through and we edit? We edit that document. It's a draft. I want to be very clear about that. And we've spent a lot of time talking with admissions representatives who are also painfully aware of the time that it takes to draft these letters. And by and large, I've received no resistance from university representatives knowing this process and how we roll it out. And so we go back through. You would have noticed, we begin with a narrative introduction. We write in what's called an organized narrative format, a bulleted letter. Begin with a narrative of the student at his or her best. Then we go through 3 middle sections that are all bulleted: academics, extracurriculars, and personal. And then a final kind of closing forward thrust about how well this student aligns with their intended major, other bits and bobs that might be relevant. And it does an amazing job, frankly, with the prompt. And again, I will share all of this in the last slide so you can tinker around at your leisure. But that's one way in which we have found, if you think back to the 2 graphs that I showed you from 23 and 24, this is one of the ways in which we've saved significant amount of time. Previous to this, we would take writing days where we would literally shut our door while the students were outside trying to get in to see us to get help. We stopped that practice this year entirely, or last year we stopped. And we gave that time back to our students. So we're meeting with our students more regularly, but also able to get our letters done. And like I said, my friend Adam, who I quoted earlier in the presentation, was able to get 8 letters done today. That's incredible. If I ever got to 3 or 4, I feel like in the previous way of writing, my brain would have been mush. Just nowhere, my brain wouldn't work. I'd be exhausted. So this is one particular use case. And I see there's some questions in the chat. And so, yeah, the questions are colleges using AI checkers for counselor recommendations? They said they are not, that nobody has said that they will. But at the other hand, the AI checker is really invalid. They're really bad at doing what they do. Even the AI checkers themselves will tell you not to rely entirely upon their validity entirely on their own. So what we say is that, we try to be very transparent in our use of it. And we try to be clear about where the information is coming from. It's not hallucinating. It's not making up information. It's coming from specific sources. I also have some colleagues that, correct, that's exactly right. If you personalize the letters, it's not an issue whatsoever. And frankly, sometimes it writes an introductory paragraph and I say to myself, no, that's not the paragraph I need to use. And I spend some more time trying to craft that myself. Something maybe personal that isn't in their brag sheet or from another source. But I have some colleagues elsewhere that will also input teacher letters of recommendation. They'll enter previous letters that they've written so that the AI knows how you write. And so it's an interesting way to go about doing this. So I'm going to keep us moving along only from the perspective of time. And so, hold on. So the other one, and I'm sure none of you ever get difficult emails, but here's a tool that we use. This tool is called Email Triager. Email Triager. And this has been a real game changer for us. And essentially what it is a small language model like ChatGPT, but only trained on the history of your emails. So it's totally contained. It's not shared broadly with the rest of the internet, anything like that. And so it's trained on your previous emails. So basically what the effect is that when I get an email from somebody, when I open up my Google, I look and there's already a draft with what the email triager software thinks I would probably say. Again, draft. So I'm going to play this video. And so I'll pause this here so you can read real quick. This is an actual email. I redacted names, changed things. My son Joe tried to register for the SAT, no space. He's an 11th grade student, decided he would like to switch classes. We're looking at some college visits. I read that demonstrated interest is really important. I saw in your newsletter that there's a big college fair. My wife and I would like to schedule a meeting with you next week. Can you suggest some times? So I'll play this through. And so the first sort of laughable component of this is when you see my inbox. And so I hit send. The laughable component is that there's nothing in my inbox. That's the joke. So we wait a second. The email's coming through. And I do this in live time so you can see the time that it takes. So this email comes through. It's thinking right now. It takes a few seconds for it to kind of kick in. And again, it's based only upon my emails. There is a way through Email Triager where you can upload other documents that you might want it to pull from. If you have a handbook or code of ethics or something like that. And so you can upload those so that it knows to pull some of the information from there. So it just without too long. So this is what the software looks like. We go back and within a few seconds, there's a draft. So the draft comes through in response to that email, and it already has, and I'm going to pause this here so you can see, unfortunately, the SAT is graded as full. It is possible to switch. However, this has implications for college. College visits in Boston. I'm focusing on business programs. Here are some suggestions. Demonstrated interest is important. Here in Brazil, here's some ways in which you might go about demonstrating interest. Information about our college fair and the link to my Calendly account for them to schedule that meeting. Now, if you think about time saved, this email would have taken me half an hour probably. I probably would have gotten distracted. Somebody walks in my office. And this one, I have to be honest, not every time this email's ready to go. It sounds like me. It's written in the same voice as my other emails to the point where I have this, I don't know, peculiar habit where I call students kiddo. I'll just say, hey kiddo, hey kiddo, hey kiddo. And apparently I write that too sometimes because some of the email responses to students will begin with, hey kiddo. So it has learned how I speak, how the language that I use, the ways that I go about constructing an email. This one's 100% ready to go. I would hit send on this one. But I often have to edit, but it's the editing process is far less time consuming than the drafting, the blank page. So again, this is a fun one to play around with. Gonna move us along. Hold on there. So next one, and I included this one. I don't know how many of you actually do data analysis as part of your work, but in a recent survey of counselors from all domains, school-based, university folks, independent consultants, and also access folks, the number one way in which people were most excited to get to use artificial intelligence was in data analysis. And now peeling back some of those layers, I'm an English teacher by training. I do not have a data analysis background. So we'll dive in here and show some of the ways in which this can be pretty helpful. Essentially, this is a slightly older version of ChatGPT, but basically what I just did is turned off the sharing of the data. I also used ChatGPT to create some fake matriculation data. So you'll see it's a bit ridiculous of an output. But what this is really just the end of year matriculation, application and matriculation data. All I did is upload the CSV file. This is very similar to what a lot of us use in different contexts. It's taking a minute, thinking about what's in that data file, and this one's a bit longer. So what I'm going to do is speed it up a little bit. So this is what the data looks like: student name, university, the type of application, the outcome, the decision. There's a likely possible reach evaluation, the SAT, and the GPA. Not dissimilar to all the software that we might use at our end, or the spreadsheets that we use. So the process of this presentation here is I go through and I ask it a series of more complicated questions. This one, based on number of applications, what are the most popular universities? Takes a second, cranks out the number of applications for each institution. And again, this is a ridiculous ChatGPT, fake data. So this isn't real in any way, shape, or form, lest you get the wrong impression about the school that I work at. Which universities have the largest number of students attending? Goes through, of course, Columbia and Harvard, 5 each, Berkeley with 4, a number of others with 3. So then the acceptance rate at Duke, realize that this is not data that's collected, so it has to calculate it. So it figures out 15 applications, 8 were admitted, so 53.33. And incidentally, I did go back through and check all of this to kind of check the accuracy of it. And when you give it a defined data set, I found that there's very little chance for hallucination or inaccuracy. So then what's the most difficult university to be admitted to? In this case, it has to go through and examine all of the data and figure out which one's which. Now, the same question, but to show it in a table in ascending order. A lot of people don't realize ChatGPT can create tables for you, which is a pretty interesting feature. While it's looking at this, LPR is likely possible reach, so the evaluation of likelihood of admissibility. While it's calculating this and kicking this out, I would just say that these are all the questions that I need to put in my end of year report for my administration at my school. So in previous years, this would have taken me basically the better part of a week to go through, and you'll see this took 7 minutes. This is the live time is 7 minutes. Again, increasingly complicated, complex questions. So what's the matriculation list? What does that look like? And again, this is an amazing high school, whatever fictional place this is, with this matriculation list. Produce an acceptance list without student names and the number of students attending in parentheses after the name of the university. So again, has to go through, has to make sense of the data, has to pull out what the query is asking for. And then create a table demonstrating the acceptance rates by type of application. So that early decision, early action, regular decision approach. And yes, you can, as Tobias shares, you can connect your Google Drive directly to this. I don't necessarily love the ways in which that works, so I tend to choose to upload files. So it's a good one. Thanks, Tobias. So where were the likely denies? So this is an even more complicated kind of question, and it's that idea of the schools that were listed as likelies for a student, how many of them, make a list of the ones where the students were denied. What was the average GPA of denied students to MIT? So, again, not information that is contained. Rita asked a good question about student data. There's kind of best practices in this, but at the very beginning of this particular one, through the settings, I actually turned off the ability for ChatGPT to share this with its kind of the mothership, as I refer to it. It's not replicable. One of the other things that is a best practice, as suggested by our IT director, is that you redact student names when you're doing something like this. What we do is we actually just use the student's ID number, which isn't found anywhere external to our school anyway. It's just like an 8-digit number. So it's awfully funny when you read some of those letters of recommendation earlier and it says, 111649646 is a wonderful student, but it does kind of, it's one more level of safety to protect the student identity. So again, about a week's worth of work that got trimmed down to about 7 minutes. So now those are kind of the biggest use cases, I think, from the counselor perspective that I wanted to share with you. And now I just wanted to transition a little bit over to the ways in which we can employ artificial intelligence in our work with students. The first one is time management. And just like nasty emails, you probably don't have any students that struggle with time management. So jump in here and really, I'm going to play this and kind of explain a little bit about what we're looking at. So this took a long time to get it to work right. And I do share this. The yellow parts are the parts that you could adjust. And the top big chunk is the college list. And in parentheses is the type of application and the deadline. I chose a really strange list of schools, really just based upon deadlines. And then you'll see kind of down a little bit further, I had each application broken into 2 parts, the application and the supplement. We said the application takes 5 days, supplement takes 3. Give it a date upon which it can start scheduling things. Also entered our holiday when we were off. This was last year, no holiday this year. And then we gave this to our students in this final yellow part. We asked them to enter any sort of major commitments. You're going to a wedding, you have an away sporting event, whatever it happens to be. And we give this to our kids. And so just really all I'm doing right now is copying and pasting this into ChatGPT and letting it rip. To see what it kicks out. Takes a few seconds, of course. It's much faster now than when I recorded these videos. It's really kind of gotten a lot more quick in its analysis. So what it is essentially doing is going back from the deadline, the submission deadline, 2 weeks. At my school, we have a 2-week rule. We ask students to submit all applications 2 weeks before a posted deadline. This is a little bit of PTSD from some of the issues that the common application has had over the years, where things didn't get to where they needed to be. So we put in a 2-week rule. And so it goes back and schedules when a student needs to begin working on something without overlapping on anything. So it's still piecing it together. And here's a comprehensive schedule. Again, in a table format, it talks about the specific ways in which the specific type parts of the application and when they need to be worked on. Our students, when we gave this to them, really varied how long they were working on each component of the application. Some students just deleted the supplement and just had a lengthier chunk of time for one application. What we find as well is students tend to kind of chunk parts of the application and are working on the North Carolina, the Bowdoin, and the Case Western supplements all at the same time, and things get muddy. They kind of lose sight of themselves. So we were trying to get them to work on one application at a time. And so if you go back through and look at this, it is entirely accurate. I will tell the funny story that I had one student who, as soon as I did this, um, he buried his face in his hands, and we gave this activity to them in kind of August. He buried his face in his hands, and I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "It says I was supposed to start my applications back in July," because he had too big of a list, right? But the other cool part that I like to share is this idea of you're able to export the output from this into a file that you can then import into your Google Calendar or Microsoft, whatever your calendar of choice is. It will allow you to upload it and import it in. We had this vision of having all of our students do that and then sharing their calendars with us. And we realized we would have, a gazillion calendar files on our own calendars. So what we really did is just targeted some of those students who maybe needed a little bit more support, a little bit more attention. So that's one way in which we work with students using artificial intelligence. The BB's activity. If any of you are fans of Ethan Sawyer, the college essay guy, his brother actually created this tool. You can find it for free on his website, collegeessayguy.com. But the BB's is the best extracurricular activity brainstorm I ever saw. So it's an acronym, and their version is really just it's just an article. So it asks students to reflect on all these different questions. And what it does is help students craft those really pesky 150 character Common App extracurricular activity descriptors. So here, I'm just going to get this going. I'm going to speed up the pace on this one as well. So there's a big prompt. You just dump it in, and what it's being asked to do is to interact with the user in an iterative process. So what activity? I ran cross country. I used that particular activity, this particular sentence, because I had a rep in my office when I was working on this, and she was saying, "I can't tell you how crazy it drives me when I look at a kid's essay, I look at their recs, and they're really sophisticated, really quality applicant for our school. And then I look at these 150 character descriptions, and it says cross country, 5 days per week, 18 weeks per year, blah, blah, blah. And then it says, I ran every day as the description." And her argument was that there's such a missed opportunity. So it goes through again, and it's this iterative process. And a lot of people don't realize that you can ask ChatGPT to do that, to kind of wait for your response and then move on. And it goes through, I'm going to fast forward because you can get the gist of this. And, when I went through, I tried to answer this the ways that my less excited students might answer it. So much shorter answers, didn't answer every question fully, kind of more thin answers. And here at the end, what it does is it kicks out 5 different, I'm gonna pause it there so you can see it. It kicks out 5 different options for a student to consider. What we found, and we've done a lot of digging and asking, is the 2 things. One, the college admissions reps have absolutely no care or concern where the student comes up with the 150 word descriptors. Secondly, there's no way to check artificial intelligence check for 150 character description. It's not long enough for it to be able to sense it. So whatever your particular bent is on that perspective, the university reps have been unequivocally in support of having our students use this. Incidentally, there is another, if you were to just Google Common App extracurricular activity descriptor, there is a recently released website that does this exact same thing. That's a free tool out there on the internet right now. So this is another way in which we work with our students to use artificial intelligence in their own practice. So the elevator pitch, this is kind of moving things along. What we found is we had a hard time with having our students see themselves and understand themselves in the ways that they're putting out there in the application. And frankly, there's been in my career a lot of kind of challenging conversations with students where I have to tell a student who's a real extrovert, outgoing, dynamic personality that they are coming across really flat in their application, or and because of the prefrontal cortex of these kids, they don't always have the ability to hear that criticism in an objective way. So that simple sentence of your application is coming across flat ends up taking a 15-20 minute conversation so I can contextualize it in a way that they're not offended by my having shared that. But then we started realizing that there's a way to do this using ChatGPT, so that it's not the counselor, it's this objective artificial intelligence that's giving them this feedback. And we found this to be one of the most effective things that we were able to do. So what we did is we took that same brag sheet that we made reference to earlier. We created this simple prompt, and it's really just creating a 30-second elevator pitch. The way we framed it to the kids is you just climb down the elevator. Standing next to you is the dean of admissions at school X, your dream college. What would you say to them about yourself? Copy and paste their brag sheet in, and in short shrift, it kicks this out. Now, when we did this with our students, it was a fun activity. We did this, and we gave it to them. We could hear the silence in the room because the kids are really excited about using AI. You could hear the typing, and they're copying and pasting, and then you could hear almost in unison the hit enter on ChatGPT, and then there was the pause. And then I had these 4 boys, and they were kind of knuckleheads. You probably know the type. They're kind of sitting over here together. They didn't say a word to each other, but all 4 of them, maybe a minute after this, started typing again. And I was just confused. So I walk over and I'm like, what are you guys up to? And each of the 4 kids was going back and they were editing their brag sheet. And I said, what are you doing? And they said, we're editing our brag sheets because I did not like my elevator pitch, but I know it pulled all that information from my brag sheet. So I'm going to fix my brag sheet so it would improve my elevator pitch. So there's a number of ways in which we then kind of moving forward, take this elevator pitch and use it in different ways. And I'll show you the first iteration of that, which will move us more into the college essay domain, which is kind of my last set of demonstrations. So we take this, and basically what it is here's the elevator pitch I've written about myself. It's the elevator pitch that just came out of that previous one. And then at the end, it talks about, attaches my college essay. How can I improve it in order to align more with my elevator pitch, to sort of tie in that which I'm trying to say about myself with my essay? Interesting story. At the same time, my mom was cleaning out some files and found my college essay and sent it to me. So I said, what the heck? And this is actually the college essay that I used to apply to colleges a long time ago. So it takes the essay and the elevator pitch and asks and gives you sort of feedback about the ways in which these things might better align, the ways in which they might do a better job of showcasing your strengths. One of the things that is kind of maybe a hallmark of our program is that, and this has probably happened to many of you, if a parent comes in and says, I don't know, whatever, let's just choose NYU. They come in and say, how does my kid get into NYU? And our answer historically has been, I can't tell you how your kid can get into NYU. But what I can tell you definitively is that there are 2 ways to ensure that they don't get into NYU. And on one hand, what we'll say is being disingenuous, and they often balk at that. And I say, no, it's not lying about yourself. It's actually something much more subtle and subversive, where the student is trying too hard to answer the question in the way they think the university wants to hear, rather than being themselves. They're not being themselves, they're just not being their full self. And the second one, which is more germane here, is trying to do too much in their application essays and in their applications. talking about these activities over here, writing an essay about this, writing supplements about total different things, and talking in each one of them about, a different trait or attribute that they possess. We found that that actually tends to not work. The example that we give with, as I had a friend who used to work at a selective institution, and this was right on the heels of the end of the paper era, where applications used to come in and be in a physical folder. And they said if you're a fan of the show Friends, they would talk about kids as if they were episodes of Friends, and if you know Friends, the show, all of the titles of the episodes are the one where dot dot dot. And this is the way they talked about the kids, the students, the applicants. So trying to harness that and getting our students to focus more on a few different sort of positive attributes rather than every single thing that they have going for them. And we found this to be incredibly effective, and the students were, found it to be very a successful approach. So I'm going to move to the next one. Okay, so then there's this. Whoops. This is a little bit more straightforward. This is a prompt that just says, as an experienced high school counselor, please review the following draft of my application essay. I love this next part. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Right? So be objective and candid and objective in your feedback. Then please share 3 points. So this, again, I went ahead and just entered my own college essay, put on my big boy pants, ready for the criticism. And then again, in this case, rather than copying and pasting it, I just uploaded a PDF. So my draft is attached, upload it here. Takes a second to load, and then just, again, let it rip. The question inevitably comes up about, student misuse of the technology. And one of the principles that we've come down on at my school is, if we say things like you may not use it, they're going to use it anyway. So it behooves us to find ways to demonstrate how to use it properly and effectively. So, I actually do share my college essay in case you want to go through and use it as an exemplar. But it gave me a 6 out of 10 on my essay. That was a bit of a stab. That hurt a little bit, but I did get into my top choice school, so I guess it wasn't that bad. It was good enough for my school. But it is one of these examples where we're trying to show students, don't copy and paste. Don't just have it write your essay for you. Write your essay and then use it as a thought partner. And that's one of the things we'll move into here, talk more about. So the question that we inevitably ask, and I made reference to this just a few moments ago, is who's teaching the kids? If we're, if we continue to come down on that very hard line of you may not use it, the students are probably still going to use it, but they're not going to be trained properly on how best to go about using it or how to fully take advantage of its capabilities. So we continue to ask, and we're college counselors. We have a wide array of different hats that we also wear in addition to college counseling in a school-based environment. But we've taken it upon ourselves to be exemplars and show them the ways in which you can use these things. And it's worked pretty well, I think, from our perspective. So one of the things that we try to share, and it was a subtle shift in the ways that we talk to the kids about it, and I mentioned it a few times, I think, is we stopped trying to think of artificial intelligence as a tool and start getting them to try to think of it as a thought partner. The way that some students might have an independent consultant, they might have a college counselor, they might have an uncle who's helping them with the process, they might have you. There is not a huge amount of difference in, if used properly, about getting advice and getting feedback on the different components of the application using artificial intelligence. in comparison to any of those other examples. So we've just tried to stop calling it a tool and just started calling it a thought partner. Would you ask your thought partner to write your essay for you? No, you wouldn't. You might ask a tool to do that though for you. So we've tried to, reframe the ways that we talk about artificial intelligence in that way. So we also there's only one rule. So it says rule number one, and people often see this slide and they're like, okay, well, I want to know what rule number 2 and 3 are. There aren't rule 2 and 3. There's only one rule. Don't claim AI generated text as your own. No copying and pasting. And yes, I do recognize the incongruity or hypocritical nature of saying, no, you can copy and paste for the 150 character activities description, but that's been met with the sort of firm support of the college admissions officers. But we do emphasize this throughout. Every time we're working with our students on artificial intelligence, we do remind them that the copying, pasting, trying to claim it as your own is taboo. So again, we come back to this idea, you won't be replaced by artificial intelligence, but you might be replaced by somebody who's using it. I hope throughout the course of this presentation, you started thinking about that. But I also hope you started thinking a little bit maybe about, the ways in which you might save some time. And what will you do with that time? I come back to our very, very deliberate and intentional taking of the time that we recouped from writing letters of recommendation and giving it back to our students, meeting with them more, and then reminding you of the ways in which that has positively impacted our ability to connect with our students and their sense of us as individuals and the support that we're giving. So again, here's all the links and the tools and the tricks. I will share this out immediately after the presentation ends, so that Miss Ayana can share this out to all of you. But you can also always just email me. I will make a self-serving plug. At the very bottom, you'll see Technology. Neil is my last name. This is a weekly newsletter that I put out that is free to sign up for, that explores the intersection of technology broadly and college counseling. Of course, there's a heavy dose every week of artificial intelligence, but I would encourage you to sign up if you'd like to learn more. And then that brings us just to the Q&A. So I'm going to open up the chat to see, covered the data question.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Tobias just to drop that last poll for us as well. And thanks, Tobias. In the meantime, if anyone wants to come off mute with a question or even a comment, thank you, Dr. Neil. This has been wonderful. This has been great. I've seen this before and I've learned something else since the last time I saw it. So this has been just very informative as usual. You have 13 out of the 18 of you, 14. Good. Almost 100% participation.
So we moved away from some of the skeptics. That's always an exciting movement for me.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, Lene said no question, just saying this was truly informative.
And each week in the newsletter, I tend to try to show a different use case, a different prompt, a different way in which you might explore using things. The question often comes up. It came up in a recent survey as well, that people were trying to figure out what kinds of prompts would be most useful to the industry. And the list building prompt was the one that seems to be by far the most, people are the most interested in. Unfortunately, the list building prompt is, nobody has quite figured it out yet. It's at the very best, you have to kind of go in with a kind of grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt, that there's going to be some curveballs in there, things that don't fully make sense. I was actually working with Ethan Sawyer, the college essay guy, trying to figure out for their it's called Matchlighters, is the program that he runs for underprivileged students to try to provide free counseling. And we were trying to create a prompt, and we really struggled. It would, trying to say that a student wants to be not far from home. He lives in Chicago. The school have a large amount of institutional aid. They need to have a high percentage of they need to meet full demonstrated need, and I'm trying to remember what the last criteria was. But it would get like 2 out of the 5 in any given search correct. It couldn't quite get its artificial mind around the question that was being asked, but it's something that somebody's going to figure it out at some point. So do I know of any introductory GPT trainings for college access counselors? No, this is as close as you're going to come, Evelyn. So there's a lot of folks that are trying to develop different sort of presentations. If you go to a presentation or a conference these days, it seems to be rife with artificial intelligence related presentations, but no specific training. There are a couple of programs where there's artificial intelligence built in. There's one that's put out by Times Higher Education that is really for school-based counselors. So if you have a school-based email, you can reach out and sign up, and that's the CAP. It's a counselor accreditation program, and they do have some artificial intelligence. And then there's other programs. One of my side gigs is I teach for UCLA, and I teach in their extension school and the college counseling certificate program. And they've asked me to create an artificial intelligence class for college counselors that probably won't roll out until second quarter of next year. But so there's people working on this, but there isn't a ton out there right now in terms of a training. That's a great question. So. Well, wonderful. Any other questions? Anybody have anything?
Yes, I have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
I guess I just want to reiterate to make sure that I understand what you were explaining earlier correctly. So for students can go to ChatGPT and, for example, describe or explain what they did in an activity, and then perhaps even write, can you summarize this in 150 characters? And then that will give them their activities description?
Sure. So that particular prompt, what it does is it asks a series of different questions. What's the activity? How did you contribute to it? What did you learn about yourself? How did you contribute to the well-being of others? What lessons did you learn? Did you encounter any obstacles? Those are the ones that come to mind, but there's maybe 15 or more questions that it asks. And then at the end, it kicks out 5 different 150 character descriptions. It's the same ideas, all the same information, all coming from the answers that you've given, that the student can then choose, modify, edit, or again, copy and paste. One of the interesting things when I was having a conversation with an admissions rep is that they tend to describe, and I'd never heard this before, they said, you have 10 activities and 150 characters each. Don't think of them as 10 150 character discrete entries. Think of it as 1,500 characters as an aggregate. And when we start thinking about it that way, it kind of broadens their perspective about the importance of those descriptions.
I see. And then you will share with us those questions that you give to your students to kind of break down that activity section, or those were just some suggestions you had that we could ask them?
No, so that piece is, whoops. This prompt here, I'll just show it to you. So this is the article essentially that is on the College Essay Guy's website, and I just created it, turned it into a AI prompt. But these are all the questions that it asks down here. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Of course, of course.
Great question. any other questions or comments? We're right at 11:59, but I do want to give folks who have any last questions or comments an opportunity to come off mute. Okay, well, it seems that everyone is in awe. I'm going to say they're in awe of you, Dr. Neal, and the
Well,
whole
thank you so
process.
much for having me. I really appreciate it. And again, my email is here. It's and I'll make sure I share this with Ayana and Tobias right after this so that they can get it out to you in their channels. But please be in touch if I can ever be of assistance.
Perfect. And Tobias, you can stop recording now. Thank you all so much. Please